And how many chapters this current arc gonna end? I'm gonna give it another like 5 is my guess, around there. I don't know. I haven't like actually done the math. That's just off the top of my head. Maybe like 6. I don't know. Maybe 7, being conservative with it. So next chapter, you're gonna get Himawari versus Jura. You're gonna get at some point Kawaki shows up, probably maybe at the end of the chapter, saves the day. Maybe Boruto shows up. You got potentially the other two Shinjuu are gonna show up and face off against Daemon, Nada, Mitsuki, whatever. You have also Hidari versus Sarada. That's gonna take a chapter, probably gonna be interspersed between this chapter and next chapter, as well as everything else going on. The A and B story happening simultaneously. And you got like the end of it. If you get Borushiki, that's going to be a chapter. And that's pretty much everything. You get whatever Kawaki's going to do at the end of this arc. You get the Jura and like the Shinjuu going on their new goal. I didn't see that being like
I didn't realize I was muted. You said 5-ish chapters is your guess?
Is my guess off the top of my head. I haven't actually like looked at it. But yeah.
Okay, because well, we should break it down then, because I do like the question. So, do you think we've hit the midpoint yet? Because if so, we have to establish what the midpoint is. You know, what's the failure or false victory that we're working with.
Yeah.
If we don't think we've hit it yet, then that would mean the arc's just going to drag out a little bit more, because chapter 5 would be the beginning chapter of this arc.
You
so
agree
if it was
with
5
me?
more,
There's no way, bro. There's no way you agree. Freaking, I hate you.
Well, I'm just using.
Oh, okay.
I'm using your.
Yeah, sure thing. Whatever you say.
Because
you
can
realize
make
I'm right.
arguments that because you could just have it be a banger start of the arc. Because if depends on what you want to say, the general story of the arc is. If you think it's largely about like overall Boruto's position with the village, then the start of the arc just works in favor of him consistently building up his good favor with the village until eventually it's gonna go downhill at the end, which I think the Borushiki thing works perfect for that. In that case, the midpoint would have to be a false victory, which would basically be, I guess, like his peak good position spot and before it starts to go downhill at the end. But depending on where you start the arc, anyway, you would have to pinpoint the midpoint. But anyway, you can argue whichever. I mean, if you're going to say the chapter 1's the start of the arc, we probably have already hit the midpoint, which would probably either be winning over Shikamaru or winning over Mitsuki. So like chapter 6 or 7 in that case. But if you're going to say it started at chapter 5, it's a little bit of a gray area, because I guess you could say chapter 9 beating up Kawaki midpoint. Goofy one, but I guess backtracking, do you think we've hit the midpoint? Yeah, so let's go back to that.
Well, seems like there's several main characters of this arc, which is interesting. It seems like it's a real big dynamic between like Boruto, Kawaki, and especially Himawari right now. So if that's the case, and the arc started chapter 5, is chapter 10, so like chapter 15 would be like the end. I would say the midpoint wouldn't be Boruto and Kawaki just beating each other up. I'd say the midpoint would be Himawari's Nine Tails, because that shifted the story in a radical different direction, as you can imagine. It can be even like the false victory, because like, well, Jura changed his target, but wait, change it to something even worse. It's Himawari now. So like, I think that works. You could also say possibly the midpoint was like Inojine's death, which could work because that's when the Nine Tails started rampaging. It depends where they go with it from there. You could also say hypothetically, if like next chapter Momoshiki just takes over and it's like a Shibuya incident to where Momoshiki's in control for like a while rather than one chapter, that could be the midpoint. But I feel like they're not going to do that. I feel like he's going to come in, he's going to have a grand entrance, do some demonic, demented stuff, and he's just going to get out. Because they want to basically redeem his character after the end of part 1. I would hope.
Seconds. I just switched over to my laptop stuff since I'm home now.
Oh my god. Well, if Momoshiki comes around, then I think they're going to have him only be around for a little bit rather than a lot of a bit. So I don't think he's going to be the midpoint. I think he's going to be an Act 3 thing.
That's what I, in my personal opinion, yeah, it's gonna be a later end of arc type of thing. That just like that's how I'm expecting anyway. I don't expect that to be a midpoint. That's kind of like I think Boruto will make at least I'd like him to make a mistake that leads in that direction, but that's besides the point. Okay, yeah.
Maytheus says
Which,
it's
in that
just bad
case-
writing that some people aren't smart enough to see. I couldn't have summarized it better myself. In fact, that basically summarizes all like 100 comments on the community poll today. Yo, Darshikage!
Wait, what did he say?
It's just bad writing that some people aren't smart enough to see.
Yeah, literally though.
We try to teach them, it just doesn't work. They don't want to learn.
I mean, that's everyone who supports the stupid Boruto time skip. Like, build up. It's just bad writing that people aren't seeing because they're too focused on the next hype thing. If something hype happens, it's good writing. It's peak. There's a battle. It's peak. Oh, Jura said something. It's peak. Baboshiki's here. It's peak. No, that's not what matters. Okay, what matters is what they do. Like the details matter.
Definitely
Like,
gonna get into that, by the way. They did a lot of that
Yeah.
in this chapter, especially with the Sarada Hidari stuff, but we'll get into that. So I gave my answer. I'm gonna say 5 more chapters, but being conservative, it depends if they want to do like an epilogue type of thing, transitionary thing. It could be up to 7.
yeah, I don't
6 is
think
safe.
this arc is gonna be like a Kawaki arc type of length by any means. So how long is the Code arc? Code arc is like 16 chapters, 56 to 72 or 71. I guess if you count it, it's
Yeah.
probably 16 anyway. Is that the second longest arc? Probably, yeah. That's great. The Kawaki arc's literally like what, 32 chapters or some bullshit. It's like chapter
crazy.
24 to 55. Yeah, so if you count 24, that's 32 chapters. That's crazy. It's double the length of the Code arc. Is the second. All right. So anyway,
3 years with the
yeah, I think
hiatuses.
7 feels like a fairly good high end for this arc because if you're gonna assume chapter 1's part of the arc, that'd be a 17 chapter arc. That seems like a good high end for the average Boruto arc. And if you don't count the first 5 chapters, that would still be 12 chapters, which is right in line with a lot of Boruto arcs. So
Yeah.
that'd actually still be in the higher end. So yeah, but 5 to 7, that feels like I would agree. That feels like a good range. I guess 4 is the lowest, but that
They
feels
got
too
a
short.
lot of
Like, and then
story
again,
to
so does
cover, and they're
so does-
covering a lot of different stories at the same time, which is inevitably going to drag it out,
That's the problem.
especially with the recap.
That's where I'm wondering about it being even longer because we've got a lot of different things going on at the same time. Like
Yeah.
you just have the whole Jura fiasco. You have Hidari's business going on. We don't seem to have Bug and Matsuri, but for all we know, they're going to get involved. But let's just assume they won't for now. You have potentially more Mitsuki. You could just assume that was just wrapped up for this arc, and that's fine. Kawaki's definitely not wrapped up in this arc. He's got to deal with his Himawari saving. He's going to come back to Boruto in some way. The whole karma resonance thing's probably going to boil over and lead to Momoshiki. That's at least what I want to happen. Boruto's got his dynamic with the village and going on, as well as everything with Kawaki, and then the Jura stuff. That's basically 3 main things going on, and a couple side things too, like Mitsuki. So, like, we gotta figure out. I mean, if we want to be fast-pacing expectations, I feel
As
like
it should be.
at least a whole chapter with we gotta have to have at least a whole chapter with a lot of Kurama Himawari versus Jura, and probably what that new power entails of, assuming it's something somewhat new, whether it's barrier mode or not. It's probably not just a weak Kurama form, otherwise that's not gonna last long. So there's at least a chapter for that. Probably a chapter with a little bit more of Hidari and Sarada, like at least a little bit. That could be mixed in with this chapter, but I think they should have a chapter that largely focuses on it. So that's 2 chapters. We need a chapter with whatever is going to happen with Boruto and Kawaki. Probably a resolution chapter. That would be 4 at the absolute fastest. I cannot see it being less than 4. Like,